MMA Rants and Raves, Anderson Silva versus Brock Lesnar. Guys, I don't know if you've been listening to the news lately, but it seems like Anderson Silva's contract expires this year with the UFC. And there have also been talks that he's looking to retire, and he's looking to go out with some kind of super fight. Now, of course, some names have come up like Frank Mir, and then, of course, GSP. That's the fight that it seems everybody wants to see, which will be a good fight. And now another name came up, which kind of really surprised me. Brock Lesnar. It seems, I don't know if Silva said it, or maybe his coach, that he wants to fight Brock Lesnar. Now, talk about an interesting matchup. The best way to look at it is to actually look at this from an unbiased perspective, which is what I always try to do. Now, let's talk about Anderson Silva. Whether you like the guy or not, you have to admit, I'm not going to be delusional. The guy is one of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters out there. His striking is probably second to none. I would say the only guy that has better striking, who's a better talented striker right now, is Fedor. His footwork is incredible. His speed, his counter-striking is probably the best. He just gets you into traps, and then he starts to fire at you. And his head movements, his body movement, his quickness. It's just he's just a complete package as far as the striking. Then he's also a judo black belt. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. His Muay Thai is probably the best. I mean, it just goes on and on. He's like a cocktail of talent. He's an incredible fighter, and his legacy is already set. He's looking to exit with a huge bang. That's what it seems like what's happening here. I mean, he's only 34, but I guess, I don't know. That's what people are saying. So that's what he's got going for him. It just seems like a guy like this is unstoppable. Now we have to look at Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar, obviously, not nearly as well-rounded. He basically possesses one mixed martial art, and he is very, very good at it. Darn good at it. I mean, it seems like he's a two-time NCAA All-American. He's a two-time NCAA champion, a two-time Big Conference champion. I mean, his record is 106-5. That's pretty remarkable. I mean, the guy is very, very good at what he does. Now, there's something else to consider about him. Although, he's just a wrestler, very good at it. The guy is a freak. He's a freak. Now, what I mean by freak, you have guys like BJ Penn, you have guys like GSP, and the guys like Anderson Silva, and of course Fedor, too. What I mean by freak is these guys are just extremely talented. That when you have people on a certain level, that they're very talented guys, and you have guys that are all the way up here that are very talented. And they're just freaks as far as mixed martial arts and being well-rounded. Now, with Brock Lesnar, he's not a freak with the talent. He's just a freak physically. See, he has this huge frame. He's a 285-pound guy, maybe 290 when he walks into the octagon. He's just massive. The guy's as wide as a trailer. And most of it is all muscle. And not just that, it's his bone structure. He's just huge. He's just so big-boned. Very wide guy. Huge shoulders. And he's got a really long reach. He's something like I think an 81-inch reach or something like that. He's got these toaster-sized fists that he calls fists. They look like hammers. And he's got all these things going for him. And then there's something else he's got, which complements his wrestling ability. The guy, at 285 pounds, 290 pounds, the guy could run a 40-yard dash in 4.7 seconds. I don't know of a human being in the world that can do that. That's that size, that can move that quick. Maybe there is. Maybe you guys can fill me in. I don't know. I didn't look at the Guinness Book of World Records yet. Maybe that's where you have to look to see a guy that big that can move so fast. World-class sprinters are usually skinny people that run very fast. This guy's massive. And fighters have said this about him. Guys like Frank Mir, and there's no love lost between these two. He said, I just surprised me how a guy that big can move that fast. Coach Tor said the same thing. He's just this huge guy that comes at you like a freight train. You're just not prepared to deal with it. Just look at the fights that he's had against Heath Herring. the takedowns that he does, how fast he comes at you. And there's not much to prepare for. There's no takedown defense that you can do because he's just too big and strong. There's too much force coming at you. It's such high velocity. And look how light he is on his feet. I remember in the Heath Herring fight, he just enters the fight. He actually threw a leg kick, which nobody expected. He just moves around like a lightweight. I mean, the guy is scary. This is a scary dude. I can tell you right now. And that's what I mean by freak. There's two types of freaks. You have the freak with the talent, and you have the freak physically. Now, I'm going to be the first person to tell you, okay, that if you have a guy who has skill, and then that guy just happens to be bigger than the other guy, I'm going to say that, skill is always going to, well, most of the time is going to trump size. I'm going to take the guy with the skill over the size. All the time. Any professional mixed martial artist, the guy who tells you about fighting, the guy who knows how to fight, take the guy with the skill. Just look at a guy like Fedor. You have a freak as far as his abilities to fight, and he's taking on guys that are huge, right? And they call him the giant killer. It's just about skill. Guys that are smaller taking on bigger guys. Happens all the time that they can win if they have the skill. But this guy's different because it's not just size. It's how his size is made. It's the way he moves so quick for a man his size. It's the quickness that's built into the size. All right? It's that huge reach, his huge hands. He's got all this going for him. He's just genetically gifted. All right? And other guys that are big don't have this. They don't have this physical attribute that he has. Now, he's got all this going for him. Now, let's look at Silva, all the guys that he's faced. Which problems did he have with guys? He hasn't had that many problems because he's been so dominant. But the guys that he's faced, that he had problems with, guys like Dan Henderson, who dominated him for one whole round in that fight. He was grounding and pounding him, and Silva couldn't do anything about it. He took him down, couldn't stop it, grounded and pounded him. And then Lutter also took him down numerous times. He got grounded and pounded. There was nothing he can do about it. So what problem does he have? With all different types of mixed martial arts, jiu-jitsu guys tears them up because they can't get him down. They can't catch him. But wrestlers that have the ability, that have the speed, all right? Speed, ability to take guys down, he has trouble with. Who has speed and wrestling ability? Brock Lesnar. Dan Henderson and Lutter can take Anderson Silva down and ground and pound him. You better sure believe that Brock Lesnar can do it. And let me tell you something, how fast Silva is. Can Silva run a 40-yard dash in 4.7 seconds? Look, guys, if this guy wants to take on heavyweights, he wants to play in the sandbox with the big boys, I see some heavyweights that he can give trouble to. I mean, even if he took on a guy like Tim Silva, huge weight difference in size, may be interesting. I give Silva a chance to beat Tim Silva. But a guy like Brock Lesnar has that wrestling ability and implements it with such speed. And let me tell you something. People say, yeah, well, he can possibly get submitted by Silva. He fought Frank Mir, who's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, one of the best. He's made a living submitting some guys. Broke Tim Silva's arm. This guy is very talented. He couldn't do anything against Brock Lesnar in that second fight. The first fight, he got the knee bar. But it just seems that Brock Lesnar has learned a lot since then and knows a great deal about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by now. And let me tell you something else. In that first fight, if you do remember, I think it was Mazzagatti, I don't know who the ref was, he made him stand up because of strikes to the back of the head. What do most refs do? They warn, no strikes to the back of the head, no strikes to the back of the head. He made him stand up. If he wouldn't have made him stand up, Mir would have lost that fight right there. Just maybe seconds, a minute into the first round. He was throwing those hammer fists, which are absolutely destructive. I mean, you could just look at Mir's face. Even when he started to stand up with his hands raised, his face looked terrible. And in the second fight, his face looked scary. It looked like a Halloween mask or something. Horrible. This guy's fists are devastating. They're destructive. And this is not someone you want to toy with. And like I said, it just poses a matchup problem for him. I would even think a better matchup for Anderson Silva would be Fedor. Although I think Fedor would win. I think the fight would be even like somewhat interesting, because not all of Fedora's opponents, he doesn't just destroy all of them in seconds. I mean, just look at the Nogueira fight, the Crow Cop fight. If a guy is very talented, it could take longer. And it would be somewhat interesting. Against Brock Lesnar, this guy wouldn't even last. I basically, this is the way the fight would go. These guys are going to basically enter the octagon. Of course, the fight always starts standing up. And I just see a point where Silva might come in, try to throw a kick, maybe try to strike a little bit, try to get inside. And that's dangerous itself. And if he does, or let's say if Lesnar comes at him, he might eat a kick, he might eat a punch. But if he just gets within a foot, maybe 2 feet, he's going to come into that takedown with such velocity that Silva's not going to know what hit him. And even if, here's the key, guys, even if Lesnar takes a punch or a kick, here's something that's not talked about much. Lesnar has a very good chin. And you know how I could tell? Because he's been hit already. He got busted open by Randy Couture. Randy the Natural Couture is a hard striker. And, he got busted open. He was bloodied. He was bloodied up, but, just wiped off the blood and just kept on fighting. And here's the other proof that I could make. As far as his chin is concerned, do you remember in that second Frank Mir fight? Frank Mir threw a flying knee, which fully landed. He got all of it. A 245, 250-pound Frank Mir, 6'3" guy, throwing a flying knee at you? And not only didn't the knee have much of an effect, he bounced off the guy. That's sick. This guy's like a brick wall. He came at him at full velocity and just popped right off of him. It just shows this guy is so massive and strong. He has such strong footing, it's like hitting a brick wall. If a guy that size, coming at that velocity with a flying knee, couldn't have much damage. Lesnar said himself, I saw a few birdies, but it's okay. This guy's head is like a piece of iron. How are you going to knock this guy out? If Frank Mir couldn't do it with a flying knee, you think Silva's kicks and punches are going to have that much of an effect? And here's the deal. We know what wrestlers do. They're willing to eat a punch or a kick just to get that takedown. Once he gets that takedown, it's over for Silva. The only head movement he's going to be doing is his head bouncing against the canvas from being hit with those toaster-sized fists. This is not a guy you want to toy with. They call Silva the spider. Well, this guy's the gorilla. And let me tell you something. If I'm going to put my money on someone, if I see a gorilla facing a spider, I'm putting my money on the gorilla. This is just not a good matchup for him. It poses a huge matchup problem for him with the way these two guys are made. And it's not even going to be a fight that should be made. It's like a freak show. I mean, look at these two guys. They're just completely different. Here's something else to consider that's going to hurt him. What does Silva walk around? They say he walks around at 215. He's going to have to gain a lot of weight, maybe 220, 225. Now, what's one of Silva's biggest attributes? It's his speed. If he's going to gain weight, that's going to slow him down. You're going to have to be as fast as possible to get away from this guy because he himself is so super fast. So that's another thing that's going to hurt him. He does not belong in a heavyweight division. I always saw Anderson Silva's calling as being at least a light heavyweight. He's too big for middleweight, too talented. He should move up to light heavyweight. He doesn't want to fight Machida, whatever it is. I don't believe in all this teammate stuff. Something has to be done about that. The same thing going on with Koscheck and Fitch. Sometimes a fight is destined to happen and it has to happen. Let him fight Machida. That would be a great fight. A fair fight, an interesting fight. Two very well-rounded, great mixed martial artists getting into the octagon together. But Anderson Silva against Brock Lesnar, that is not a good idea. It will be a huge mistake for Silva. And he has this legacy. He's looking to go out with a super fight. Well, let me tell you something. If he faces Brock Lesnar, he's not going to be remembered as the guy who destroyed Chris Lieben and Rich Franklin, and the guy who's the best pound-for-pound fighter, one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. He's going to be remembered as the guy who got mauled by Brock Lesnar. And let's say he's able to get a kick or a punch in. If you remember the Frank Mir fight, I remember when Frank Mir tried to hit this guy. It's just when you kick and punch something that's like a wall, you just bounce off. It's the recoil. I remember one of the times that Frank Mir fell, he was trying to strike with this guy, but he's so solid. He's like a wall. You try to hit a wall, try to kick a brick wall, you're just going to bounce right off and hit the ground. And that's what happens with this guy. When people try to stand up with him, you try to punch him, and if his punch hits your punch, you're just going to bounce right off his punch. If Silva tries to even hit this guy or kick him, he just may recoil, lose his balance, and hit the ground, and then when he just comes after you like a freight train. And then, of course, you have the David and Goliath scenario. Well, to David's credit, he had a slingshot. Anderson Silva is not going to be able to fire any slingshots at Brock Lesnar. He's walking in. These guys are walking in naked. They're barefooted with shorts on, and that's it. All he's got are his hands and his legs, and that's it. And he any punch that he throws, like I said, he's been hit before by much bigger, stronger guys, and it didn't have much of an effect. And it certainly won't have an effect on Lesnar. If Anderson Silva hits him, it's not a knockout punch. He's not going to be able to knock this guy out. I'd like to know what you think. Maybe you're seeing something I don't see. Do you see how Silva can possibly take on a guy like this? I was thinking about it. Maybe if they fall down the wrong way, he might be able to grab his leg and get an e-bar like Frank Mir did. But I don't see how that's going to happen. He's just, like I said, there's one talent he has that's just too good, and it's his wrestling. He knows how to take guys down, knows where to take them down. And I don't see how Silva can even submit this guy. Frank Mir couldn't do it. He was so smothered with that weight and that power. There's just you need flexibility. You need to be able to move under the guy. You can't. I see poor little Anderson basically squeezed under this huge guy. And his wiry legs and arms are just, you can't even see them. And he's just being pounded in the head with those massive fists. There's just nothing that you can do about it. You need flexibility when you look into triangle or an armbar or a Kimura. Kimura, forget it. He's just too strong. I don't think you can get him in a Kimura. But there's no flexibility. And the other problem is, what makes Lesnar even scarier is, if you remember the second Frank Mir fight, the guy himself moves like a spider. The guy was just spinning around Frank Mir, passing his guard constantly and just continuing the assault. I don't see how he can contend with it. He's not going to be able to get on any submissions. So if it's on the ground, basically it's going to be over really fast. If you actually see how Silva can have a chance against a guy like this, I would like to know. Please leave your comments. Please rate this video. Please subscribe. And thank you for tuning in.